for those who haven't met me, I teach in the Logic Rhetoric School. I teach Algebra 1. I teach 9th and 10th grade humanities, 7th and 8th grade literature, and Latin 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's my goals this year. I'm also dean of faculty. And Mr. Murray asked me to share with you today about creating a classical home. But I want to back up a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about classical education and who we are at Trinity. So at Trinity, we talk about the fact that we have 3 pillars. Everyone know what our 3 pillars are? Pillar 1 being we're classical. Pillar 2,
Christ-like.
we're Christ-centered, where all of our teaching revolves around Christ and is God-centered. And pillar 3,
Academic excellence?
no,
No.
it's a good one. It's we're hybrid model, which is why we do co-teacher training, okay? So if we think of those 3 pillars, academic excellence kind of falls right here with this, okay? So if we think of those 3 pillars, what ones of that drew you to Trinity in the first place? If you think about your why you're here, what drew you to Trinity to begin with?
Ours was classical conversations, but I was too scared to do it myself.
Okay, and so the hybrid piece where there was more teacher involvement created an appeal. Okay, that's good, right? Others, I want you to really kind of get in your mind your why. What drew you here before we begin this conversation, because that really matters, okay? What else drew you here? I would guess there's different reasons for each person.
Ours is Christ focused.
Christ focus. I think that's a lot of families' reasons, and we stand as an option to pursue truth coupled with academics that is not available in modern education. Okay, good. Other reasons. What's your why? If you want, just jot it down. Okay, I want you to kind of have that in the forefront. So when we talk about classical education, what does that mean to you? What are some buzzwords you've heard? What does it mean? If we're going to talk about creating a classical home that supports what we do here, what is it? I have to have participation, yeah. That is part of it when I lead. I'm not comfortable nonstop lecture. So what are some words you've heard as you've talked classical education? What does it mean? What does it look like?
Teaching your kids all of the books that you didn't like when you were in high school.
So we have literature,
Yes.
and that is classical. Okay, so we have classic literature, and maybe you have poor feelings about some of the texts. Okay. What else is classical education?
Latin.
Latin. Okay, what else?
Classical education sees things like mathematics and art as equally important.
Okay. Other things you've heard, things we've talked about around classical education.
Broad and deep knowledge and understanding.
Broad, deep knowledge and understanding. Of what? Of what? Broad and deep knowledge and understanding of.
The physical world and the human experience.
Okay. What? Same?
Yeah, the universe and people here.
Stages of learning.
Stages of learning. Okay, so within those stages of learning, we have the trivium, and we talk about the grammar, the logic, and the rhetoric, okay? So I'm gonna write those up there because it's always good review. Grammar, logic, rhetoric. Our school is titled, we have the grammar school, we have the logic school, we have the rhetoric school. These parallel with development levels of children. What would be the grammar stage of learning? Ultimately, what is it about?
Introduction.
Introduction of what? Introduction of knowledge. This answers the question what? This would be all your basic vocabulary, all the basic building blocks, building pieces that you need to know to learn a subject. If you are going to learn a new hobby, you've got to learn the vocab first before you even know what to do with it. This is your how and why. Once you understand the terminology, then you can manipulate the terminology and make it do something. And then this is the presentation. You have such an understanding that you are able to explain it to someone else. You can tell about it, you can talk about it. And so within classical education, that's our goal. Now, something I thought we might mention is that students learn how to learn. Or we develop virtues or loves within the student, okay? Those are part of classical education. Well, you'll hear the buzzword, it's not necessarily a buzzword because it's our goal, we try to do this, that students not just know the facts, but they know how to know them, like they understand those. So within our stages of our school, we try to use specific tools to help students know how to learn, okay? And that is part of what is classical. Now, within our hybrid model, we pass the torch to co-teachers, if you're in the grammar school 2 days a week, to continue what we try to start during the week. As I was studying for this, Joshua Gibbs, he's an author, and he's a very pointed author, but he said a classical education is offered in the classroom, but home and church must prepare the student to accept it. I'm going to say that again. A classical education is offered in the classroom, but home and church must prepare the student to accept it. In other words, that environment, that culture that they are in outside of the time they're here at school makes a difference in their ability to receive the tools and the information that we are trying to impart. If we are teaching them to love classical literature, and then the rest of the time they're on social media or TikTok, those two things are going to be in direct conflict with each other. And the student will eventually have to choose which they love, right? And so as parents, as co-teachers, as instructors, we have a responsibility to think about the environment with which we are cultivating. So with that in mind, classical education is more concerned with loving what is right than just knowing what is right. Classical education is more concerned with loving what is right. That goes down here with those virtues and loves. They not only know what the right thing to do is, but They have seen enough examples and discussed enough examples that they love what is right and can recognize what is right. And I think that's something we all want for our kids, right? We don't want them to just know it. We want them to live it. So, what do we need to do on a day-to-day basis so that our students' home life matches what we have chosen for education? Okay? So, if we think about home, what are some things that are part of home? Your students been at school all day, and we come home. I'm going to try to make this as practical as I know how. What are some things we can do to make home match? So we're just going to start basic. What are some basic things that happen at home?
Siblings.
Siblings. What are some other things that happen at home?
Mealtime.
Mealtime. Okay, what else happens? What happens at home?
Playtime, where all their toys are.
Okay, so we have routines, and within that, that would include playtime, and I'm gonna kind of make recreation its own thing. We have chores, right?
Where they let their emotions down.
Right, it's their safe place, right? What are some options available to us that help us with these times as we think about our kids, okay? And I'm thinking, with siblings, what types of activities do we see going on with siblings?
Pillow fights at my house.
I was gonna say, that's the first thing. We have fighting. We have conflict, right? We just had a whole great session on conflict resolution. That includes our kiddos too, right? How does that affect all of this? How does that affect your ability to do all of this? Quite a bit, doesn't it? If you sit down on your at-home learning day on Wednesday and you've started with this before you've ever looked at the to-do list, that sets a tone, right? So what can we do to alter that? What can we do to alter that? So let's say you had a big blow-up fight between Jimmy and Susie, all before you sit down with books.
Resolve the conflict.
You can resolve the conflict, yes. Or maybe you decide we're gonna kind of read our Bible first and pray before we ever dig out a book. Even though we wanted to start an hour ago, we've got to get this figured out, right? Would that be in line with developing virtues and loves? Yes. Would we need to be okay with doing that because we're putting some things aside to develop virtues and loves? Yeah, it's okay. It's probably the most important thing you can do is to set that tone for your day. So in setting the tone, you want to try to develop a natural curiosity within your kiddos. How can we do that? What are some things you can do to develop natural curiosity?
Reduce noise and stimulation.
Yes. Reduce noise and stimulation. that just a periodic thing, or is that like you have this as like the pervasive amount of your home? Which is hard when you have this going on. Or if you have lots of kiddos, it's harder to have quiet. When you need to listen to them. Sometimes we get so busy and our to-do list is running 3 steps ahead of where we want to be, and we don't necessarily stop and listen to what they're saying. Well, if we stifle their curiosity and don't allow them to talk about their interests, we won't know how to tap into their interests and help them to grow, okay? So listen to what they have to say. Help them explore their interest. That can be so much fun. I have learned things because of my kids' interests that I would have never pursued on my own. My daughter loves art. I am not artistic, but boy, I've learned a lot by helping her explore and learn with her. I have a son who loves sheep. I didn't know anything about sheep. I was an animal science major, but I was focused more on cattle and hogs. I've learned a lot, right? I have a kiddo who loves engines. Not my thing, but I can ask good questions. I can help connect them with resources. I can help them explore. I can encourage their curiosity. I can encourage their passions and their interests, okay? I can help them find answers. That's a skill they will use over here too. Learning how to research, how to find answers. We can go outside. We can explore. And point to God's creation. Develop their curiosity. Now, what can you do at home to inspire a love of learning?
My kids like to teach me things from their day.
That's a great thing. Ask when they come home or request that they teach you something. Allow them to teach you something they learned. That will probably work better with the grammar school students than with the logic rhetoric school students. You tend to get quieter as they make that transition, but this is a great way to inspire love of learning. Okay? What's other ways we can inspire love of learning?
Just having books available for them to pick up whenever they want.
Not only have books available, be readers. And I'm not talking just to kiddos. Be readers. Talk about what you're reading. Have a conversation with your significant other or with your, with a grandparent, with a friend, in front of the child about something you have read, something you learned from reading. Let them see you learn through that, okay? Make learning part of your rest. Maybe you learn a new hobby together. Maybe you cook a new food together. Yes?
You need to be intentional and mindful about your own attitude towards learning and not be, it's time for math.
That's really important. And I'm not saying you don't have feelings about certain things, right? We already talked how we feel about some particular books or how we feel maybe about Latin, okay? That is part of the package. And so thinking about how we're going to be enthusiastic and present that in a way that our feelings from previous experiences don't filter down within your at-home learning day, okay? Thinking about how you phrase it, and if you're struggling, then I would pray about it a lot before you approach those subjects. That's a really good point. Yes, our attitude needs to be one that loves to learn new things, and our kiddos will catch that, okay? So, inspire love of learning, develop natural curiosity, foster critical thinking. Foster critical thinking. How can you do that? Can you help your kids think?
Encourage problem solving. So like if they unload the dishwasher, have them look for where it goes versus just telling them.
Yes. Don't be helicopter parents. Don't swoop in every time they've got a problem. Let them solve some of the problems on their own. Even if it's messy, let them fail. And then come alongside and have a conversation about it. Okay? Let them be bored. It's okay for them to be bored. Sometimes that's when they develop some of these things. Maybe they'll pick up a book. Maybe they'll go outside and develop something they're interested in. Maybe they'll develop a new hobby, okay? Maybe they'll build a fort. That let them be bored. Model deep discussions. And that can be done during this meal time. Like that's a valuable time. Eat your meals together as a family as much as possible. Now, there's nights where everyone's going multiple directions and it doesn't always happen. But when it does, use that time wisely. Have deep discussions. That could be a time you're talking about something you read. That could be a time that you're asking purposeful questions to go deeper than what the weather is outside or what you saw on social media that day, right? Model that in a way that your student then sees deep conversations here as valuable because it's all part of their environment and culture. Reflect, that's beauty. In order at home. Now, I'm not saying that your home has to be perfectly clean all the time. That's not what this is. But teaching your child that God is a God of order and beauty. And so we have beautiful things and we take care of them. We steward them well. This is where those chores fall into play. We take care of what God's entrusted to us and we care for it well. Sometimes there's this factor within that. I mean, this whole chore thing takes training on itself. You have to show them how to do it. One of the classical teaching tools is mimetic teaching. You model it 3 times, and before you turn them over, that's what we do with chores. You may have to show them how to clean their room 3 times before they can do it in a manner that creates order and beauty. Not just all stuffing it in the closet or under the bed, right? Okay. You also be careful. 2 yeses and nos. So be careful what you say yes and no to. Because the fact is whatever you are saying yes or no to is going to take time. And if we're going to be intentional about a lot of things, you've got to be available and you've got to be home at least some of the time. Be careful. Be careful what you say yes and no to in their own activities, your activities as well as theirs, because it all begins to add up. Be together. Pray together. Learn together. And I want to think a little bit and talk a little bit about technology. Technology, well, I'll tell you what Joshua Gibbs said about technology. He said that you treat the smartphone like a communicable disease. That was his direct quote. Because its addictive nature kills all of this. A child who is addicted to a smartphone or to screens will get very bored in a classic novel that spends 50 pages getting the setting, and they can't just click to the next thing. They will be bored during deep discussions, and it will be hard for them. So we need to be mindful about how the things we allow them to do are going to affect all of this. It's kind of the point of a classical home as a support system for what we do here. As we think through these things, so we talked about you have siblings, you have meals, you have routines, we have recreation, it's a place of safety. During any of these, you can inspire a love of learning. During any of them, you can help develop natural curiosity based upon your conversations and your attitudes. You can take the opportunity to foster critical thinking, and you can reflect God's beauty and order at home. Now, we've got about 10 minutes before we're supposed to be done. I wanted to give you each some time. I've got paper on the table to think about the upcoming year. If you were here last year, what were some of your challenges on your at-home days? And what might you be purposeful about to make your home a bit more in line with what their education is? And I wanted to give you the opportunity to write about that just a little bit. I'm going to share with you the same quote I ended my new teacher orientation with, because you guys are teachers too. Andrew Kern, the president of CERSI, said, "The most important thing every teacher should understand is that teaching is the art of being imitated. If you want a student to perceive a truth, you have to embody it. That's what teaching is. When you teach, whether you intend it or not, you are saying to your student, imitate me." And every time I read that, I think about Philippians 2 passage where Christ was being the very nature of a servant. He set aside his deity, and we're told to imitate him. Likewise, we have to embody those truths and virtues we want our kiddos to carry with them. And we have to be purposeful about that. I don't think it just naturally flows easily. I think we have to be purposeful. So I wanted to give you a little bit of time to journal about that a little bit. Whether you take notes, maybe one thing spoke to you. And so you're going to hone in on one thing that you're going to do. I would pick at least 3. Maybe chore time is something that's challenging at your house. And so that's something you're going to focus on. We're going to work on creating order and beauty at home. Maybe your schedule's just chock full and you're like, I just don't even know how. So you're going to talk with your spouse and figure out a way to pare down some activities so that you have time at home. Maybe you guys are readers at school. Your student will be reading a minimum of 20 pages a day when they hit 7th grade on. So developing that skill now. Maybe you develop a nighttime reading routine. Maybe you just do some fun activities together to inspire curiosity or learning. Maybe you plan some fun activities on family learning days that revolve around your child's interest that would inspire curiosity. Maybe you've noticed this summer that listening is hard because you're always in your own thoughts and trying to get done with your to-do list. So maybe you say, after supper, I'm going to purposefully talk to my child. Or maybe that's before bed at night when you go to tuck them in. Or if it's a teen, like my teens always wanted to talk at night. When I was bone tired, that was when they lit up, and you would just have to say, okay, this is the time. I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn. Maybe maybe your kiddos fight a lot and it gets in the way of your school day. How are you going to combat that? What are some tools you're going to use? Does anyone have other things that you have? Like I went ahead and just did this. I was thinking more discussion based, but weren't getting a lot of discussion. So I kicked into more lecture. Do you have struggles that you would like to talk about? And we could use all the brains in here to come up with ideas. Yes.
I had an experience when I was younger and teaching my kids. I went to a friend's house, and her house, just walking in the door, the atmosphere was so calm. She had 4 kids, I had 4 kids. There was nothing calm going on, but there was just something about going in her home. I sat on the couch, and I heard classical music playing very softly in the background. And it's like I didn't hear it at first, but when I sat down and was kind of collecting myself, I started hearing it. It's like she just played classical music all day. It was just always on, very, very softly. It was just in the background. But I think that probably had something to do with just setting the tone, the atmosphere of the home. And it calmed me down.
Yes.
It made me feel like, okay, this is a good place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just something simple like playing music.
It can make a difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
When my kids are fighting at, sometimes it might be 6:30, way too
Right.
early.
Way
to have
too early.
conflict. And I just start singing whatever hymn pops in my head, and we just sing, and then finally they join in because they'll know the song, and then it stops.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe they get an instrument or something, but it helps deviate the day,
Yes.
and we get back on task, and much happier.
Yes.
So I use that. Not, I wouldn't say all the time, but you know what I mean? Just
Yes.
different times of day for sure, and it's always really paid off and helped to redirect. So
I used to music a lot as well.
Mhm.
And I always had it playing in the car for car rides. Yeah. My daughter uses audiobooks in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Her 3 will fight like cats and dogs unless we get an audiobook in, and then it's stone quiet, and that's just their routine. So, other thoughts? If not, I'm going to give you time to journal. Thanks for listening, guys. Journal some thoughts. There's paper on the table. You need paper? those who are staff, you can think about how you can foster these things with at-home assignments. Mr. Griffith always sings in the hall between the coffee room and the office. Always. Yes.
It was funny this morning, Mr. Sinet came down the hall and he was humming the the prayer before lunch that we do. And then probably 20 minutes later, Mr. Griffith comes down and is humming the same thing. I'm like, oh, Mr. Sinet was just singing that.
I think we're supposed to depart for lunch at 12:15, right? Yeah. So, thank you all very much. Before you leave, I would like to close this in prayer and pray over your school year. Father, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity that you present to us with children. Father, may we be careful to imitate things that are worthy. May we be purposeful in our discussions and in our time, as we are limited with a short amount of time with these young people. So Father, we thank you for the opportunities that you will give us this year. And we thank you for the strength and guidance that you provide. May we walk in a manner pleasing to you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys.